So good morning and welcome. Good to have you here this morning, and if you're visiting again, I also want to echo what Jim said. We're so glad you're here, and let's get acquainted after the service. If you have a few moments to chat and have some coffee and some refreshments, that would be wonderful. And as you were listening to the theme this morning, I guess you can tell that we're in the month of Thanksgiving. And our music is about gratitude and appreciation. And Fawny's song was about the big gratitude, wasn't it? It was thanking Spirit, God, whatever you want to call that, marvelous, loving grace and energy of the universe for all the gifts. That's behind every other thing we have to be thankful for. And today, then, I'm going to kind of bring it down into more of our day-to-day. How can we really bring that experience of gratitude and thankfulness into our walking around challenges and what we're doing each day. So as I said, it is the month of Thanksgiving, and we can tend to get a little bit maybe blasé about this giving thanks, about being grateful. We do have so much for which to be thankful, and yet we can get just a little bit taking it for granted, and even maybe have this thing saying, well, I've heard it all before. I know I should be grateful. Oh, there's that obligatory gratitude. And I think behind all of it even is, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? We're all really, I know, everyone here is generous and thankful and not all about me, but I still think sometimes when we're looking at spiritual lessons and life lessons, we might think it's a swell idea, but bottom line is, well, what's it going to do for me? So we're going to talk about that today. Because it has gratitude, thankfulness has a lot in it for you and for me. One of the best gratitude books I've read in a long time addresses this. And it came to my attention a year or two ago, and it's titled Thank and Grow Rich. You heard that right. Thank and Grow Rich. And it's by a woman named Pam Grout. And in this book, and the subtitle is, it's a 30-day experiment in shameless gratitude and unabashed joy. So she goes all out in talking about thanking and the riches, the rich living that comes from that being thankful. And of course, she takes the title from the book by Napoleon Hill, which is a master, classic, wonderful book with a wonderful message, Think and Grow Rich. And this is not to take away from that at all. And she does give kudos and credit to him for this. But she also says, let's just consider that possibly sometimes the real power is in not thinking, or in not thinking in the way that our minds habitually tend to think, which is always drawing on what was happening before. If you have Netflix or Amazon, have you noticed every time you go on their site, up comes a message says, because you've ordered these things before, we recommend some more of the same. Well, that's kind of what our minds do. And that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing because there's a lot in our minds that's useful information. A lot of data, experiences, past information. So a lot of that, yes, is useful at times. But in creating a new experience for ourselves, not so much. Because all that old information, just like the Amazon recommendations or the Netflix recommendations, is kind of here. You like that? We're going to give you more of the same, more of the same. And, of course, there's something deep in every one of us that is always nudging us forward to something more, something greater. It's not to negate everything that is, but it's always a deeper experience of our life. But our minds will tend to use that as our reference point, what happened in the past. So she's suggesting let's forget thinking about that, or let's suspend that kind of thinking for a moment and simply start thanking right now, in the moment. Thanking, not siphoning through the back information and saying, well, let's see, should I be thankful for this? No. Start thanking right now, because when we do this, we are initiating a new experience. We have to, because we are not drawing on what was. When we start being thankful in the moment right now, we're starting something brand new. It's not contingent on that old reference point. I like to say maybe the short version would be, the answer is thank you. Now, what was the question? Try that. When something comes up during the week, a thought crosses your mind, say, wait a minute, what was that thought? Now, the answer for all this is thank you. Now, what was that again? Changes things. So she calls this ferocious gratitude. Ferocious gratitude. I mean, this woman's very intense, and her writing is very, very high energy. But I like that, because she really reminds us that gratitude's an energy. It's an energy frequency, just like any of our intense thoughts, beliefs, feelings. What a wonderful energy to tap into. So she says, when we practice this ferocious gratitude, this gratitude energy frequency, it does something. It opens a portal straight into the heart of the very field of infinite possibilities. Infinite, endless, not what was from before and based on that, well, maybe yes, maybe no. No. When we're on that gratitude frequency, it opens us that portal into infinite possibilities. And by the way, infinite possibilities, that's that spirit, what Fawny was singing about, the universe. It's all around us and beyond, and it is within us as well. And that attitude of gratitude, that gratitude frequency, opens us to that. It cuts right past the head and into the heart and soul. So gratitude functions kind of like a magnet. And that's what my title today is, Gratitude as a Magnet. And here's how that works. One of the ways is as you thank, you start to recognize that you are rich already. You start to recognize it. So this is not about putting gratitude on hold until you, for example, get something or lots of things or accomplish something. It's about when we start thanking, we start recognizing, oh, I have so much to be thankful for. There's a vast abundance that we tend to take for granted. And there's more. As we are thanking, choosing the gratitude frequency, it does generate, it attracts a wealth of experiences notice I said not stuff, experiences that feed your soul, that feed your real desires. What are real desires in life? Truly, they're not for more stuff and things. They're for the opportunity to be of service, to be a channel for love, and to be a creative energy, to create things. And when we're in that attitude of gratitude and thankfulness, that gratitude frequency, that magnet attracts those kinds of experiences for us that are so deeply soul-satisfying. So gratitude is a magnet, and it does also attract things for which to be grateful. But more and more we do recognize it's a combination of that magnetic force awakening us and also, as a matter of fact, attracting things. And the thing is, when we develop that attitude, that altitude, I'll say even, to play on word, that altitude of gratitude, our energy field, our vibration truly does change things. It does this by changing the vibration of our energy field to one of gratitude, and that changes our perception. Have you noticed, if you are shifting from complaining or feeling like there's not enough and you are starting to be thankful for something, about something, it starts to change your perception, and that perception has energy behind it. And that perception actually starts to rearrange the molecules and the tiniest subatomic particles of our being and of our world around us, literally changing things, literally changing what is going on. It's more than just a fluffy thought. It's a scientific, energetic phenomenon. And that's why we say in this philosophy of science of mind, change your thinking, change your life. Incredibly powerful. Dr. Ernest Holmes, the architect of our philosophy, says it in many, many ways, but one of them that I like is he says, gratitude is the power which attracts the hidden potentialities of life. As I said again, it's the stuff you can't see, but you start moving into that, I'm grateful, I'm thankful, and things that you didn't recognize start to show up. So how do we do this? Well, she suggests 3 things in the book, 3 ways to do this. First thing is simply thank everything. Thank everything right now. Here's just a tiny example. Instead of saying, I have to do something, say, I get to do something. I have to experience this. I get to experience this. I have to go to the dentist. No, I get to go to the dentist. Pause. Sidebar, I did that once. And it worked. And so I kept on doing it. And here's what happened. I was immediately so grateful for a beautiful, sterile office, for top dental practice, someone who knew what they were doing, equipment that worked. I thought, how marvelous. I mean, when you have a bad toothache, believe me, the gratitude wells up. So I'm just saying, I have to go to work. No, I get to go to work. I have to run all these errands. No, I get to run all of these errands. I remember that happened with my husband, Erwin, when he would go with me on errands, and he'd kind of have a list, and I'd have a list, and we'd take a day. And I thought, I haven't got time for this. I just kind of was resisting it, and then something kicked in, and I thought, you get to be with him all day long, and we kind of it evolved into kind of a day-long date. And we'd go do our little errands, and we'd comment on them, and we'd, comment on the people, and, comment on the drivers, and then we'd go have lunch, and then we'd go to a movie maybe, and then we'd go have a coffee date and talk about the movie, and the whole day ended up being really quite wonderful. But it wasn't at first. It was I have to do this. So see, that's one way to start being grateful for everything all the time. Be a broken record, as she says. Just be a broken record. As I said, what is the question? The answer is thank you. So what is the question? Louise Hay, the really brilliant voice in the spiritual and human potential movement, she had a lot to say about this, but I always remember the one thing she said in the morning when she would wake up, before she even got out of bed, she would thank her pillow, thank her blankets, thank her bed, thank the sheets. This is what I'm talking about. So that's number 1. Thank everything. Number 2, be astonished by the smallest, most seemingly insignificant and even impractical things. Be astonished. Again, I'll remember my wonderful husband, Erwin, who used to, when we'd be leaving and driving out of our condo complex to go do our errands, and he'd always say, oh, look at that sky, babe. Where else would you want to live? I mean, just filled with gratitude, and that set the tone for the day. Look at that. So I still say that every time I'm going out. Sorry, just a little thing I do now. He passed away 4.5 years ago, but he's still influencing me. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Be not just thankful, but wow, just in total astonishment. How beautiful. Someone said it this way: if we saw the world as it really is, we'd be dropping to our knees every 5 minutes to say thank you. Third thing is, what are you staring at? What are you staring at? Where's your attention? Now, usually in our culture and our general conditioning, this is hanging out with people and just listening to the news, and wherever you hear the collective voice, it's about what's not working, what there is to be complaining about, what is certainly not to be thankful for. And we start staring at that. And that does not, of course, cultivate that energy of gratitude. So in the book, she tells a story about going for surfing lessons in Costa Rica with her daughter. And she said our instructor was named Jesus, and he was very clear. When you get on that board, you keep your eyes focused on the sandy part of the beach. Do not, under any circumstances, take your eyes off that part of the beach. The board is always going to head. Why would that be? Because the board is going to head toward whatever you are looking at. And she says, since the last thing Jesus wanted to do was peel two first-time surfers off the rocky side, stuff all over the sides of that sandy part, she said, he was quite adamant. Keep your eyes on the sandy beach. What are you staring at? That's going to direct where your board's taking you. That's going to direct where your life is taking you. Just like the power of staring in a certain direction directs that surfboard. The miracle of focusing with gratitude is that it changes the world you see. You know, we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. That's what that's saying. So thank everything. Be astonished at the tiniest things. And what are you staring at? Where's your attention? I want to wrap this all up now with a story, a true story. I discovered a book that's called A Simple Act of Gratitude by a man named John Kralik. And it's a powerful testimonial to what can happen when we shift that attention to, instead of thinking, thanking. So here's how he starts it out. In December of 2007, actually the 22nd of December 2007 was my lowest day. I felt my life was at an irreversible personal dead end of failure and loss. My law firm was losing money and losing its lease. I was going through a second difficult divorce. I was completely out of funds. I was living in a small, stuffy apartment where I often slept on the floor under an ancient air conditioner that didn't always work. My children had grown distant from me. A horrible year was ending with promises that things would soon get even worse. I was a 52-year-old man, 40 pounds overweight, pasty, tired, with a terrified sadness in my eyes. After 28 years of work as a lawyer, I had little more to show than I'd had when I started, and the little I did have was, well, in jeopardy. So a few days later, it's New Year's Day, and he says, I decided to take a long walk up in the hills. He lived in California, in the hills around Pasadena. He had no one to spend New Year's Day with, he said, no company, but an inner voice that kept saying, loser, loser. That was his company that day. So he's on this sad walk, and he's a couple of hours into it, he heard this voice in his head, and there's what it said. Until you learn to be grateful for the things you have, you won't receive the things you want. He said, I don't know who spoke to me. And by the way, this is not a spiritual, mystical book, not a religious book, not a guy who does a lot of New Age things. This is a lawyer who's like going down the tubes. And he hears this voice. And he says, I couldn't explain it, and I certainly could not explain the words that it said to me, which seemed to have no logical relation to the other thoughts in my head. And I couldn't be grateful for anything going on in my life right at that moment, but I came up with an idea. I would try to write a thank you note to one person every day. I would try to find a different person each day of this coming year, and I would write a thank you note to them. By the end of the year, I would have written 365 thank you notes. I was exhausted, and I still had little hope. Did I have anything for which to really be grateful? No. The way my life was going, not at all. But he did it. He did it. And by the end of the year, by the end of 2008, he said my business was thriving. I was getting physically fit, running 15 miles a day would have been absurd for me just months before that. And he said, well, did I have everything I thought I wanted? In other words, did I recoup all my losses? No, not yet. Yet he said, I started to be thankful for what I had. And I realized that I had everything I needed. Whether or not my life had changed, my experience of it had changed. Moment by moment, it had been transformed by writing those thank you notes. And over time, he did rebuild his law practice successfully. His relationship with his children improved greatly. He got healthy, he bought a house, and his dream of becoming a judge came true. And of course, he wrote the book. And over the years since that, he has continued writing these thank you notes. They probably number in the thousands now. And after the book, and people read this, they started doing that. People with even, he said, more dire circumstances than I had saw this and thought, oh, might as well try it. And then the testimonials started coming in about how lives were changed, lives were saved, because people had started just this simple practice of thank you. Gratitude is a magnet. Dr. Ernest Holmes said gratitude is part of a practical philosophy of daily life. It's practical. He said there is no wiser way of living than to remember every morning what life has given us, and then to lift up our thoughts in thankfulness. So I leave you with this. This is your takeaway. First of all, I'd say try it. Try it. Maybe you don't have to write the thank you notes. You may find your own way. But try, instead of thinking, thanking. Think less, thank more, because truly gratitude changes things. It changes things, and of course, one of the biggest ways and reasons that it does is because of the song that Fawny's going to sing for us now, which is, God is so good, and so it is. Thank you.